Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are on the River Amazon, playing as the Vampire Counts. And this is the last of the Twitch series games that I'll be casting here. That should be a pretty fun one. Obviously, the Vampire Counts versus Chaos matchup, which you can see here, is what we're doing, is a bit of a kind of one-dimensional matchup, really. Usually the Vampire Count player, in this case me, brings the Mortis engine and then defends it with his life. And if you can defend the Mortis engine, you win. If you don't, you lose. And that because that's kind of the only option the Vampire Counts have. And people complain about that. It is a bit of a one-dimensional matchup, but nonetheless, we'll definitely see how things go here. So, first and foremost, of course, from the Lord and defensive side of things, I did bring the Red Duke. I think he's the best for defense. Okay, melee attack and melee defense, nothing spectacular there. He's on the undead in a zombie dragon, so he's got Swarm of Flies, -5 melee attack, very solid. He's got Pestilential Breath, which actually does apply a debuff when it hits, which I think a lot of people don't know. He's got Invocation of the Heck, Raise Dead, Foe Seeker, and of course El Sif, which is a great debuff to enemy lords and heroes. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect single target models, so you can't hit, say, a Sphinx of Usef with it, or a Shaketh, but nonetheless, very potent debuff, and can definitely help goon out enemy lords who might be trying to push through to go after the Claw of Nagash. Alongside that, 2 Terrorgeist in case my opponent brought Terrorgeist, Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, Dragon Ogres. Obviously, they won't win in a 1v1 trade, but with interfering zombie summons, Invocations of Nehek, El Sif, and all that sort of stuff, as well as sheer mass, there is 3 of them here, 2 Terrorgeists and the Red Duke. I figure that they'll be able to out-trade and do okay against a unit like, say, Kolek or Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. My front line here, very cheap chaff heavy infantry, the Tithe with its physical resistance and extra models, backed up by 2 vanilla zombies, 2 skeleton spears, Sternsmen. So these guys are really the only powerful unit here. Everything else here is cheap chaff. Backed by the Mortis engine, of course, to sap away at my opponent's HP pools, to heal my troops, and to provide additional power recharge rate. On the other flank, the Necromancer basically intended to do the same thing, except obviously he's not doing DOT damage. He's got Raised Dead, he's got Invocation of the Heck, just like the Red Duke, Forbidden Rod for those extra power reserves, and of course the Master of Dead for constant AoE regen. So this front line will be constantly being healed and constantly supported. On the forest, we do have the Dire Pack. I wasn't sure what my opponent would bring. If my opponent brought some horsemen, I wanted to have something a little bit to kind of zone away, make him leave my Terrorgeist and my Red Duke alone, and definitely chase something away from the Claw of Nagash. Over here you can see the Hell Cannon shot already going into the Sternsmen, doing immense damage with a nasty hit to the center of my formation. This was a spaghetti line formation, so definitely some rough stuff. As we are closing the distance, though, you can see we can look at our opponent's army, and a bit of an interesting build. Very elite infantry heavy. Not necessarily the wrong way to go, but my opponent's army, he does have Archaon hidden somewhere. Actually, not entirely sure where. Where did Archaon go? Oh, he's over here in the woods. So Archaon, the never chosen, or the sometimes chosen nowadays, he's a little better than before. Obviously, a monstrous melee attack stats. He's got magical attacks. He's shielded, 120 armor, great HP pool, weapon strength that gets buffed further by Slayer of Kings. Stand Your Ground, Flaming Sword of Ruin, Cascading Fire Cloak, Fireball, Kindle Flame. Fireball is actually really potent against Vampire Counts because most of them are susceptible to that. But interestingly enough, no Crown of Domination, which I think is decent for that immunity psychology and extra leadership. But nonetheless, very potent sort of lord here, hidden out in the woods. However, he doesn't have great mass, so on Dorgar, he's going to struggle to push through my front line, hopefully to get at the Claw of Nagash. Over here, Marauder Horsemen, who can obviously chip away and be a nuisance. And despite everything, the Hell Cannon could also be a bit of a problem. The Hell Cannon, it's been nerfed for most part. It's a little more accurate. I think over here you can see it's about to crash again. They're trying to hit the Sternsmen again. But honestly, if it hits the Claw of Nagash, it's not a single target sniper, but it does do magic damage. It does have pretty good damage output, and it could chip away at the Claw of Nagash potentially and do some nasty damage over time. Though the Claw of Nagash does have some magic resistance, so it would be tankier than I expected. In the meantime, you can see right now the Dire Pack is going to start moving out of the woods. You can see they're starting to move. Actually, they're not moving yet, but they'll start moving shortly. I'm going to ping them to go attack the Horse Masters or the Horsemen, and the poor Sternsmen are getting annihilated. For his front line, my opponent has a bunch of Chaos Marauders with great weapons, which I think is a bit of a mistake. They're backed by an Exalted Hero here, and the Exalted Hero does have a bunch of fancy abilities. He's got the Mark of Horn, which is basically Frenzy, Hellfire Sword, which is a great buff to damage output, but more importantly, it gives him fire damage, and then Deadly Onslaught, which once again, more damage. So if he gets in the back line, gets on top of my Claw of Nagash, it could be bye-bye Claw of Nagash very quickly. So this guy definitely needs to die if possible. This front line of Chaos Mirage, I think, is a bit of a mistake. Personally, they're low morale. They don't trade very well against Graveguard. Maybe okay against Graveguard with Grey Weapons, but in my opinion, a bit of a mistake. You'd be better off bringing normal Marauders. And you can see here's the problem with the Hell Cannon. One breath attack from... I wasn't entirely sure. It's been a while. I know the Star Dragon can one-shot the Hell Cannon. I figured maybe the Terrorgeist can do it too. Well, the Terrorgeist can't, but one-shot, Hell Cannon's already down about... how much HP? About over 1,000 HP. We throw things into full speed, and the second Terrorgeist is going to do basically the same thing. It wobbles there a little bit, not entirely sure why, and then breathes on the Hell Cannon, and there goes my opponent's artillery. So that was about 1,200 points down the drain after raking in 30 kills. Now, granted, it was 30 kills on the Stearnsmen and a handful on the Tithe, but definitely not worthwhile. Definitely not paying for itself. The rest of my opponent's army, 3 chosen with great weapons, and then a single unit of Chaos Warriors with halberds, who had been defending the Hell Cannon that is now defunct. Now, personally, I think that you're better off bringing Chaos Chosen with great weapons or Chaos Warriors with great weapons, but nonetheless, this sort of build, the backline here is going to give me a lot of trouble since I have very few ways. They can easily chop through my squishy troops here, and obviously, if I dive a Terrorgeist in there, they'll still chop it up pretty effectively. It's just that halberds would be much more dangerous. Over here, the Dire Pack are pursuing the Chaos Marauders, and the Dire Pack is a little faster, 95 speed to the Marauders 90, and once they get into the woods, the Marauders will get slowed down because they're a large target. The Hounds will not because they're small, and despite losing models, the Hounds, of course, have a bonus result of 14, and they're going to slaughter those Horse Masters, or the Horsemen. In the pits, the fight is going down. The Stearnsmen diving in against the Chaos Marauders, where they will trade very well. Now, one of the big problems, and this is another mistake from my opponent's part, and I want to point out, my opponent here is casting Flaming Sword of Ruin, and Flaming Sword of Ruin in this sort of situation is not very good. Flaming Sword of Ruin provides 25% weapon damage, except that's non-AP weapon damage, and most of these guys' damage is AP. So you can see these guys are just getting +2 damage out of that. Probably not worth it. Not really worth the Winds of Magic. And would have definitely, I think, been better off with something else, trying to snipe me with a Fireball, for example. In the meantime, over here, I do summon some Skeleton Warriors just to block the Chosen and the Chaos Halberds. As over here, the Necromancer is being pursued pretty angrily by this Exalted Hero who's hell-bent on really destroying this backline. Over here, the Mortis Engine, of course, is sapping away the HP of these Chaos Marauders. And my opponent here chasing with the Hellfire Sword, chasing after the Claw of Nagash, and forcing me to run. I do get a little bit of a recharge here on the backline, going after the Chosen. Obviously not planning to do super huge amounts of damage, but just trying to be a nuisance. I do get another summon of zombies just to block my opponent off. He is chasing after the Claw of Nagash, but he is in for a bit of a world of hurt here. He gets dove upon by the Red Duke, by the 2 Terrorgeists. The Red Duke's actually taking a bit of a beating. I do believe he got hit by a Fireball, but you can see the poor Exalted Hero just getting annihilated. He gets hit by Elsif. He's getting hit repeatedly by the Terrorgeist. He's obviously mounted on a... He's got no melee defense right now. So basically, I've got like a 100% hit chance against this poor bugger, and he is going down like a 9-pin. He's forced to rout, and he's a goner. So at this point, my opponent's army, you can see it's trading. Obviously, it's trading very effectively here with the Chaos Marauders, with the everything's going to crush my front line. My front line sucks. There's nothing else to say there, except for the Stearnsmen, and actually, the Stearnsmen are getting wiped. So except for the Tithe here, which just has so much mass, or so many models, things are looking grim. The flank here has been wrapped up. You can see the Skeleton Spears here. It's a bit of a mess here. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. These Chosen with great weapons are kind of intermingled with spears and zombies, and it's all over the place. Not entirely sure what's going on, but either way, not a great spot to be in for the Vampire Count, so definitely not great. I did overcast the Notification from the Heck, trying to keep this front line up and running for a little longer as I dive in on Archeon, who pops another Flaming Sword of Ruin, trying to get those damage buffs. But now, granted, the Flaming Sword of Ruin does affect Archeon, so it's a little more decent there. And obviously here, Archeon, I don't have another Elsif ready yet, so Archeon's pretty tanky. He does pop Slayer of Kings, and you can see there, he's sitting at over almost 800 damage. So against the Red Duke, who's susceptible to fire damage, that's definitely some rough stuff. But you can see he's getting kind of beaten down, and Archeon's actually going to be forced to rally here. He's down to, he's not going to tear up because he's immune to Psychology, but you can see that constant chip damage from the Mortis Engine. And if I can kill Archeon, the game is essentially set on that timer, because the Mortis Engine can kite all this infantry. And at this point, the game is essentially decided in my favor, even though it might not seem that way, because my opponent still has a very potent infantry force. My opponent here does get his halberds into the fight, he does get his Chosen into the fight, but at this point, it's actually basically just a question of time. Fireball does go in belatedly against the Claw of Nagash. Archeon over here fleeing for dear life, but I'm not really able to pursue him, and the Terrorgeists are struggling to land hits. He's kind of hiding around them. Sometimes the attack animations really kind of mess you up. But either way, I decide, instead of fighting the infantry, we're just going to take off. We're going to get some rear charges here and break these Chaos Marauders. Another Flaming Sword of Ruin going down, being a nuisance, and we simply disengage. We fly away, and I actually haven't used my breath attacks yet either. You can see I finally remember the Dire Pack, which has wiped out the Marauders, get him around the flank here to get a rear charge. Over here, Archeon diving in on the Necromancer, and you can see that immense damage going down. Necromancer is actually not susceptible to fire damage, but he gets clocked by Archeon. One swoop there, and the Necromancer's down by a huge chunk of his HP. So now Archeon here, an absolute beast in melee, but he's overextended, he's positioned badly, and in comes the Goon Squad. And so he's in a rough spot. Elsif does go down, he's slowed, he's not able to, because he's slowed, he's not really able to maneuver. He's actually within range of the slow effect, I think, of the Claw of Nagash, or was for a second, so he's not able to get away, and he is going to go down hard. And with that, my opponent's army is essentially put on a timer. At this point, it's, unless I really mess up and simply plow my Claw of Nagash into these troops, my opponent can't win. And that's without counting the breath attacks and those sorts of things. So I start pulling my flyers up, I throw the Dire Pack in. They're not going to do good against Chosen, but you can see I'm setting myself up for some breath attacks. I'm summoning more zombies. I still have great winds of magic because of the Claw of Nagash. It's just doing all this chip damage. My opponent's army does simply shatter to army losses, giving me a Pyrrhic victory. So one of those things that you can see, this really shows the way that Chaos and Vampire Count setup is done, and it's unfortunate. It is the way it is. It's really the only. And you can see if you look at the losses, most of my opponent's army was still intact. Most of my army was gone. It was only really the Claw of Nagash and the Terrorgeist and the Red Duke, but that is all you really need to win against this sort of army. Obviously, I don't think my opponent's build wasn't the most competitive. There are definitely things, if you're going up against Chaos, you want to bring Kolek probably, and at least one other, and one Shaggoth at least, to get that great anti-large bonus. Perhaps a caster of some sort of either death or shadows or something like that to provide debuffs. You need something to catch the Claw of Nagash and apply some pressure to it, most units are too slow to catch it for Chaos. Otherwise, you need to bring a lot of horsemen with throwing axes and pressure it that way, or not even throwing axes. You can bring normal javelins, you can bring horsemasters and throw javelins at it. It has no armor, it has like 40 armor and no physical resist, so it's pretty squishy and it goes down pretty easily. And I think I would recommend bringing, if you bring Kolek. If you bring Kolek and a Shaggoth, you can zone away your opponent's big flyers, bring Chosen with halberds, and then bring some Marauder Horsemasters or horsemen with spears. The flatter trajectory will make it easier to hit a maneuvering Claw of Nagash or Mortis Engine, and you can kind of slaughter them pretty effectively. Knights or Hounds are not, in my opinion, worthwhile. Knights are too slow. Hounds will get terror routed. And those are really essentially your options. I can't really think of anything else. Manticores suck. That's basically, you could bring, I guess, an Exalted Hero. That's actually one other option, is Exalted Heroes. If you throw an Exalted Hero on a Manticore, and you have the Hellfire Sword on him, he does get a bonus to damage against the Claw of Nagash. As we discussed, its armor is not very good, so you can dish out quite a bit of hurt that way, but really that's about all you can do. For my army, I think this is a decent build. I'm not entirely sure this is the most competitive way to do things. I haven't really done enough testing or play with vampires. I just know this is a very functional build. Frontline tanks it out, holds their own. They're not going to win any beauty contest, but they just hold. And you can see it's still a handful of units here. Four of the 6 chaff units were still alive and tying down my opponent because of all the crap I was summoning, all the units I was summoning. So my opponent couldn't get to the Claw of Nagash. I managed to wipe out his key his key sort of counters, and with that, my opponent lost all chances of shutting me down. Had my opponent brought, say, Kolek or Shaggoth, things might have gone a little differently. It could have definitely pressured me a little more heavily, and it could have definitely made things a little more grim. As for the rest of this, yeah, Terrorgeist okay, Red Duke okay, not much to say. They all did good. For my opponent's build, as I mentioned before, I would go for halberds and drop the Chaos Marauders. I don't think Chaos Marauders are worthwhile, at least not the great weapons. Chosen with halberds are honestly the way you want to go. And yeah, that's about it. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Great game to my opponent, 14th Gemina Victrix Legion. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about the game or anything like that, be sure to share them and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye for now.